What's going on, everybody? Friends, listeners, new listeners, repeat listeners, loyal fans, welcome back to the show. This is an exciting episode because we finally got Mr. TJ Woodward himself on the program. We are super excited to have him. TJ is the author and founder of Conscious Recovery and the Conscious Recovery Method. He is a spiritual minister, thought leader, and all-around badass when it comes to recovery, spirituality, and blowing our minds, quite honestly. I'm doing this intro solo tonight because Dallas is in Cabo right now, celebrating his 6 years sober, and that is just absolutely incredible. Super proud of him here at the show. You know, on that, I just got to say, there are a lot of people in recovery. I know a lot of people in recovery. I've worked in the recovery field for 11 years, so my network is very big. And I may be biased because, you know, Dal is my friend and co-host of the Betterment Bros, of course. But I just got to say on the air that I don't know a lot of people that are as dedicated and tuned in to their recovery as Dallas is. This is the kind of guy that spends his free time learning, reading, helping other people, trying to pursue a better experience while on this planet. And, you know, when new people in recovery ask me, oh man, who can I look up to? What should I be like? I don't have any good examples or role models in my life. Well, I'll just refer them to my good buddy, Dallas Terrell, because very few people make recovery look so good. And not enough people are having as much fun in recovery as this dude does. So that being said, Dal, the Betterment Bros, we're proud of you. Our fans, our audience, hopefully they're proud of you too. You've accomplished a lot, man. And you are a constant inspiration to me and everybody else that gets to share their lives with you. So we thank you for your service, for your positivity, for the impact that you're having on this planet. And that being said, it's time for the show with Mr. TJ Woodward. We hope you guys enjoy. Here it is.
Hello.
Hello, TJ.
Hey, Jeremy.
Hello, TJ. Can you hear us?
Yes. Hi, Dallas. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
Fantastic. You know, why not?
I love that. Yeah. I love that. So, TJ, we're super excited to finally get you onto the podcast. It's been so long. And I know our audience is going to be thrilled because we plug TJ Woodward and Conscious Recovery all the time.
I would say every other episode.
I would say at least, yeah.
Oh, well, thank you so much for that. I'm really grateful to be an honorary bro today.
That's right.
The honorary bro.
So, TJ, we have a tradition. We start every show with a 2-minute takeaway, which is just a reflection of the week through the lens of gratitude.
Ooh.
And so, Dal, why don't you kick it off?
You want me to kick it off?
Yeah, why don't you kick it off with a takeaway?
I can kick it off. My 2-minute takeaway for the week, this is kind of, let's see here. Well, like technically it's for next week, but in 5 days, I'll have 6 years sober from everything.
Awesome.
Everything except ibuprofen. So with that, I think just comes a lot of gratitude in general on reflecting how these last 6 years have been. Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. So I don't know. It's kind of just generally for that coming up. Usually I get more excited for my sobriety anniversaries than my actual birthday. And I think it's because the September 7th, my anniversary, I feel like I was born again or had a second chance to live.
Right.
So therefore, it almost feels like more important to me than like the first chance I got because I had nothing to do with that. but I had a lot to do with my second chance to live.
Well said.
Yeah, so I've been really kind of just, sitting with in like this, like trying to be humble about it too, like humble progress, like a humble brag. But I'm just super grateful for where I'm at today and the people I've met, TJ, Jeremy included, and just kind of the company that I keep. And yeah, I just could never imagine any of this. And it's nice to know that it's real and I could feel it and I can touch it, and I'm grateful for it. So that would be my 2-minute takeaway for essentially next week, but also this week.
Yeah.
Just looking forward to being grateful for this just kind of forever, maybe. We'll leave it at that. Forever.
I love it, dude.
Yeah.
Congratulations, man.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, TJ, do you want to
rock, paper, scissors, you and TJ.
Yeah, right.
Virtual.
Yeah, virtual rock, paper, scissors. That seems complicated. TJ, how do you feel about jumping in next with a 2-minute takeaway, my friend?
I am always happy to talk about gratitude. And, what came up for me, and Jeremy, you know this, but about 3 weeks ago, we got a dog, and it's something that we've wanted for a long time, and he's amazing. And it's a really interesting story. He's a rescue, and, we started looking for dogs. We kind of knew what we wanted. And we saw this dog and we loved him, but it said he's afraid of men, so we would not recommend him being around men. Well, it's me and my husband, so we didn't think that was probably going to be a good idea. But a few weeks later, we looked on the website. He was still there, so we decided to drive down and meet him, and he was also just 30 minutes away. And there was this instant connection and this instant bond, and the woman who runs the rescue could not believe it. She said, he's never done this. He's never approached people. And we were holding him on the first time we met him. So I am super grateful. He came home 3 weeks ago, and it's been really, really interesting and such an incredible opportunity to, really experience unconditional love, because that's what dogs or what any pet teaches us is unconditional love.
So
and
true.
Also impermanence, just like the joy of the moment. And he's just awesome. And his name is Cowboy. So we're really happy to have Cowboy in our lives.
Welcome to the show, Cowboy. We should get a picture of him on the Instagram.
Dude, Cowboy is so awesome.
How old is Cowboy?
Cowboy's 2 years old.
Oh, okay. Is he a Dallas Cowboys fan?
He could be.
He could be.
I've got some Dallas Cowboy stories that we might not talk about today, but
Damn.
I live in Dallas. So I've got some good stories. And we'll say he's a Dallas Cowboy fan for sure.
That works for me, TJ. Well, congrats on the new dog, because dogs are the best. Yeah, of course. That's amazing. I love dogs. I'm a dog guy. Jeremy's a cat guy.
Yeah.
But he can understand the pet love.
Absolutely. I definitely, there are a lot of dogs that I like. There are only a few that I love. But one thing is for sure, and that is that I 100% love the love people have for their dogs.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get a dog. I'm going to have a dog at some point, and I'm going to love that thing like I've loved nothing else. You know what I mean?
You sold me on it.
Yeah, it's
That's
just,
right.
where I run into trouble, Dal, is I'm very particular about my things.
Mm-hmm. I didn't know that.
I keep my...
I knew that.
You knew that. Bro.
Yeah.
I keep my shoes real clean. You know what I mean? I keep everything real nice.
Yeah.
And the thought of a puppy coming in and being puppy-like, it brings up some stuff.
Okay.
And what it brings up is much less intense now than it was a few years ago, because I'm maturing emotionally, or whatever you want to call it.
Well, Jeremy, I agree with you completely, which is why one of the things we established right away is we're not getting a puppy. We're going to get a full-grown dog, and that takes all that puppy, training out of it. So I feel you.
Yeah.
And so far, Cowboy hasn't chewed on anyone's shoes. Hopefully that helps.
That's good, because y'all got some nice shoes too. I've seen them.
Good job, Cowboy.
Yeah. All right. Well, let me jump in on some gratitude real quick here, guys.
True.
I've got a really good one. So, Mariah and I moved recently, And, as many of you know, we got the studio back up and running. We're almost done building the studio. It's awesome. But I was in the garage, and I had a box in the garage, and it was my high ticket items, my nerd stuff, like pictures of me with celebs and, autographs and stuff like that. But I found my comic books, a bunch of comic books that I have signed by Stan Lee, to Jeremy from Stan and stuff like that, dude. And I hadn't looked at them in a while, and, so when I was like looking through them, I'm like, damn, dude, like I was telling Mariah, I'm like, one of these, I have a comic book, Fantastic Four from 1973, dude.
Wow.
Somebody was signed. Somebody was reading that comic book in 1973, and I have it signed by Stan Lee in the garage. And I just thought of and we were talking about how, when comics came out back in the day, it was like a weekly thing, like a TV show that we like
coming out,
like the new episode of Walking Dead or the new episode of this. That's how comics were. And so I was just out in the garage, and we have this couch out there that we're trying to sell. Anyway, so I sat on the couch, and I was just reading my comic books, man. And for that hour, it was just so right. You know what I mean? And I don't know, man, for whatever reason, it just really, I was feeling it, man.
Wow.
Yeah.
I gotta read that comic book.
Well, so you can't read that one.
Why not?
It's in a case. It's sealed.
Okay.
Because it was authenticated. So basically, when Stan Lee signed this comic, me and two other dudes that work there walk over to this booth where they certify the autograph and then ship it off to a comic book grading company so that they can verify that the signature is not forged.
Gotcha.
You see what I'm saying? So literally,
it's like a toy you don't play with.
Exactly.
Okay.
They walk you from Stan Lee over to this thing like security to make sure you're not faking it and shit.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
What? Okay. That is extremely nerdy, but extremely awesome.
It's like the most badass part of my nerdiness,
Yeah. Okay.
And it's worth a lot of money.
Dude.
Yeah.
Well, it won't be nerdy when you have a Bentley.
That's right.
So there's nothing nerdy about a Bentley.
That's right, dude. Amen.
That's right.
Oh, man, I love it. All right. Well, hey, that's the takeaways. So, TJ, listen, we were challenged with what the hell topic we would bring up when we finally got TJ Woodward on the Betterment Bros. And Dallas made a really interesting point. He's like, we always say, like, every episode we'll be talking about, like, projection or emotions or the shadow or
anything, really.
And we're like, oh, man, we should get TJ on to talk about that. And then, of course, the night of, we can't remember a single one of those, right?
Well, that's perfect. That's perfect.
It is perfect. And what came to me right before we jumped on was a concept I know that you've spoken to in the past, and something that Dallas and I actually did an episode on, sort of, not last week, but the week before. And we were talking about reframing 2020 and kind of looking at all these events through a different lens and being with everything that's happening and stuff like that. And definitely stuff that we've talked about before as well. And one of the things that we got the most positive feedback on was our perspectives about social media. And what I wanted to explore tonight, the three of us, is, if I remember correctly, you did a talk on the algorithm of consciousness, or consciousness as an algorithm. Yes.
Yeah, I did. Some years ago, I realized that there's an algorithm, of course, with social media, and it's very, very simple. What we click on or what we comment on grows. We get more of it, right? They give us more of what we put our attention on. And I woke up one day and thought, wow, that's just consciousness, right? Whatever I focus on grows. And that doesn't matter if I'm focusing on it because I love it or because I hate it, right? So whatever I put energy toward, I'm going to get more of. And I just notice right now in our culture, so many people fighting. You know, I watched the conventions, just a little bit of them. I can't do too much of the political conventions.
Yeah, those are harsh.
They're harsh, right? But one of the words I kept hearing them say is fight. It was like the talking point was whatever you get up there and say today, just talk about fighting.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we fight something and we put our energy there, we're going to get more of it. So in that way, life is an algorithm, right? It's not just on social media. It's in our daily interactions as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think one of the things, I absolutely love that. I love that whole concept. And one of the things that we got into last week that I kind of want to explore, the three of us tonight, is exactly that, the fighting on social media. And this is something that we've discussed kind of independently here and there, but I'd really like to look at that because I am genuinely curious about how I can navigate the current economic, social, political climate as with consciousness, with awareness of what I'm doing and how I'm engaging with people. And every once in a while, I find myself getting caught up in the fight, wanting to fight, watching the fight, enjoying the fight,
Mm-hmm.
all while knowing that it's not, like, I have a visceral feeling in my body when I see it. And it's kind of like when I see the videos of like people crashing cars and stuff, like you get a physical feeling, but like you keep watching.
You do. Yeah.
And I'm really curious about that. I'm really curious about that.
Well, I want to start by kind of taking a pretty deep dive right out of the gate, because we could talk around it in a lot of different ways. But for me, the deepest possibility here for myself is to recognize that I want to move beyond the good, bad, right, wrong paradigm.
Mm-hmm.
And it has to start with me recognizing that I'm not my opinions. I'm not my thoughts. I have thoughts, but I'm not my thoughts, right? And so if I'm not my thoughts, what am I? Who am I? And if I recognize there's an essential self that is unharmed and unharmable, and also I came into this world as this pure energy, and then all the programs that were given to me became my opinions, became my point of view. Many of us don't even know we've been programmed, right? And so I'm walking around not aware that I'm not my opinions. And so if someone does something that I perceive to be wrong, then I think I must respond, because if I'm going to do the right thing here, I need to let them know my opinion, and I need to let them know what my thoughts are about it. And so I think starting with that is a great starting point, because if I believe I am my thoughts, then I'm going to need to defend them. If I believe I am my perspective, my points of view, and it can be name any topic, right? Name any topic, and I'm going to have opinions about it. But if I believe that's who I am, I'm going to need to defend it. And usually that means make you wrong and make myself right. And we all know where that goes. So I think that's a good starting point for the conversation.
Oh, that's the best starting point. And I love that you said that. That's amazing, TJ. It's a good way to word it too. Because I've found myself questioning the response, questioning my opinions, questioning the judgments of the things that we read, right? Whatever the topic may be, whether it's like, political, race, or COVID, whatever is coming up, we have an opinion. And then when it is challenged or questioned, or we dislike something, our first response is, my first response, I would imagine, is to judge the person, not myself. So I kind of like what you were saying there, and I agree wholeheartedly, where it's like, why is this happening? What does this have to do with me way more than what they're saying or what they're doing? Like, why am I so invested? Why does this feel so good or bad? So I love that you said that, because I feel that same way often.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it starts with what you just said. I think that's so important, is to notice my reaction or my response.
Mm-hmm.
If all of us, and I'll start with me, because really I don't know what anyone else needs to do. I just know what works for me.
Right.
So if I pause And I recognized that something just got touched within me, that it's far less about what someone did or said, but it's something that got touched. If I can focus on that rather than what someone just did and go into the good, bad, right, wrong with it, I can recognize that there's something within me that's getting churned up. And if I don't look at that as a negative, but look at that as like, wow, something is getting pushed within me and it's happening so that I can grow. And when I'm in that framework and that mindset, then I'm far less likely to need to defend my position.
Yeah, I love that. I love that so much. And, you know, one of the things that you both said that I really, really resonate with is the pause. And it's really like one thing that we've talked about, Dallas, on the show before is like when you're in a heated argument with your spouse or your loved one in person, it's really hard to take that pause.
Oh, absolutely.
When you're really caught in the emotions and the energy of the room, it can be so hard to take that pause. Mm-hmm. But with social media, it's a lot easier, right? Because you're typing.
You have to.
Yeah. And so like what I've found is like, I'll type a response. Mm-hmm. You know, I'll sit there and I'll type away, dude. And I'm mashing that keyboard.
Let it flow out.
Oh, I mash that keyboard, you know, about how right I am and how wrong they are. Mm-hmm. And, you know, how smart I am and how dumb they are, you know?
Yeah.
And as I'm mashing my keys, what's happened to me lately, at least, is that I'm looking at my words and I'm like, what am I trying to do here? You know, and why am I trying to do it? Mm-hmm. And so much of it comes back to what TJ was talking about with the programming. And that is something that until very recently, I was so out of touch with, are these stories that I have told for so long. I assume that they are true. And, you know, like I'll give you a really silly example that's just super perfect because of how silly it is. I used to go around just hating Michael Bay. Okay, the filmmaker. Yeah,
for Transformers. Yeah. Right? I've heard so you talk so much shit about so Michael Bay.
And so much so that he would release a new movie and I'd be like, nah, fuck that. I'm not doing it, dude. Why? Because it's Michael Bay and I don't do that. Okay, but he released a movie that I really, really liked. And I was like, oh, fuck. Like, like I'm so wrong now, you know? Like everything I am, this identity, this role that I've assumed as Jeremy, the guy who hates Michael Bay movies.
And Transformers.
Yeah. All of a sudden, that's no longer real. And it was very uncomfortable realizing that. This is a really silly example. We'll get to some meaty ones, I'm sure. But just recognizing that I have said the same things. Like I said it once, probably like in 2013, and I got a room of people laughing. And so I just stuck with it.
Right.
And I assumed this role. And so I've found that on social media, it's like, yeah, like I don't really get into politics on social media because when I do, I recognize that what I'm saying isn't me. It's just me repeating stuff I've heard. And I don't know why I'm really doing it other than the fact that I have this role. I've assumed this, this character almost of someone who believes this or that. You know what I mean?
Of course.
Yeah. And I appreciate what you're saying, Jeremy, because, you know, a lot of times we'll hear someone say, there's your version of the story, my version of the story, and the truth is somewhere in the middle.
Yep.
And I actually have a very different way of framing it. And that is both of us are 100% correct because it's our point of view, right? So that helps us to move out of there's one truth here. And sometimes people will push back. Like sometimes I'd be facilitating a group and I would say, even what we consider to be facts aren't really solid. Like even, well, someone's like, well, isn't 1 + 1 2? I'm like, okay, so let's pull 2 chairs over here. Here's 1 chair. Here's 2 chairs. Does 1 + 1 = 2? Well, sure. Well, is this chair even solid? Right? How many millions of particles actually make up this chair? Right? So the reason I use something that abstract is because I think one of the deepest programs that we have been given as human beings is that there is an answer to everything, right? And we need to figure out the answer and who's right. And I have a very, very simple way to frame this. Not who's right and who's wrong, but what gets created when I believe this, or when I say this, or when I do this, right? So Jeremy, you talked about feeling it in your body. If I'm willing to pause and feel what's happening in my body and allow that to actually run its course, I'm far less likely to have a belief that I need to tell you what you need to believe. You know, we could have a whole conversation around cancel culture, but what I'll say now, just briefly about that is, you know, we've had a lot of discussion around race. And what I've noticed is people are calling each other out for being racist. And I'm wondering if that maybe it's because people are afraid to look at their own, right? So for me, I notice if I want to point fingers, I'm going to first stop and say, how have I contributed to the issue of systemic racism, right? So then I get out of the debate around it and start becoming accountable. What are my unconscious beliefs and biases? Let me not look at what someone else is doing, but let me really reflect. And, you know, some people say, well, do you really believe that's all the world needs? Can you imagine for a minute, Dallas and Jeremy, if each of us would pause right now and be accountable for what we're thinking and feeling and not point fingers? What would happen to our perceived issues in the world? Because war, whether it's, you know, an argument with a loved one or a global situation in the world, it's almost always I'm right and you are wrong, or this is mine and you can't take it. So when we are deeply entrenched in these concepts, it creates conflict, but only 100% of the time.
Well, those were some words to think about, TJ, for sure. And I was trying to imagine a world where that happened, and I couldn't. And it felt sad. Yeah. I was like, I wish I could see more of that. I wish more of that would take place, like you were saying, where we all look at ourselves first before looking at somebody else and do our part to make things better if we can. And I just think that's so interesting because I guess I don't see that a whole lot. And maybe that's what we're saying too, is if we saw more of that, what would that look like? Mm-hmm. It feels better. I know that much. Yeah.
And I mean, it absolutely does. And I posted something today on my Instagram. I saw this meme, and I rarely do I like reshare political memes. Mm-hmm. But this one, it said something to the effect of, imagine if rather than cancel culture, we had like deep thinkers and, you know, critical conversations where we really do just set the emotions aside, or not set them to the side, but what if we actually just had a conversation? And if through the conversation we discover like, yeah, that's some messed up stuff. Okay, cool. But what with cancel culture and with everything that we've been talking about in this episode and last week too, right? It's this like quick reaction.
Right.
There's no space to really reflect and say and see like what's really going on all around here. And you know, like TJ and I have very fundamental disagreements on big issues, right? Not a bunch of them, but like there's a handful of things, right?
That's okay.
And here we are, right? Like BFFs, and you know, we work together and we're, you know, stomping around the globe trying to spread the message of conscious recovery. And we have disagreements about certain things, right? It's like, you know, so many of my friends have radically different opinions and ideas than I do. And sometimes I'll entertain it and we'll get into it a little bit, you know. But what would happen if at the end of the day, I recognize like you're a human being just like me, and the world that we're living in is made up of our projections, you know?
Of course.
And TJ, maybe that's something we get into is like, so I'm reading A Course in Miracles. And and this book, dude, Dal, like
it's got you spinning.
I thought A New Earth from Eckhart Tolle was like a mind melter. Mm-hmm. That was nothing.
You're becoming unhinged.
Yeah, dude. And
so I have a list of like, after that, we'll take you to the next one. I mean, it's just amazing where we can go with this idea of projection.
Yeah. Right. Well, and that's what I want to kind of, because that's essentially where we're at, right? It's like, I'm reading this, and what I'm starting to kind of recognize is that, like, so the world exists, right? We know that. And TJ, please, like, correct me at any point, because
you got this.
So this world exists, right? But what essentially is creating our world, like Jeremy's world, right, is the way I see the things that are happening. Mm-hmm. The way I interpret is what is then being created.
Makes sense.
Am I onto it there, TJ?
You're 100% onto it, right? And I only so what we were taught reality is actually the illusion. And what many of us were told the illusion is actually reality. And what I mean by that, I'll say it a little bit. I'm going to start by saying it really simply, and then we'll dig into like the quantum field in a moment. That's the teaser. But if you have 12 people in a room and an experience happens in the room, and you ask all 12 people to say what just happened, you're going to get 12 stories. And some of them might be similar. Some of them might be radically different. I remember once I was facilitating a group. This is so many years ago when I worked full time in treatment, and I had about 20 clients in the room. And, we were in the middle of a process, and one of the clients got up and whispered to me, I have to go check in with my therapist. So she left. And then about 2 minutes later, one of the clients interrupted the person sharing and said, are we just going to ignore what happened? And so, of course, I love working with what's in the room. So I said to her, what just happened? And she said, well, clearly such and such was triggered because I was talking about my mother, and I know she has unresolved issues with her mother. So clearly she left because she's upset. And so, okay. So I decided at that moment to go around the circle and ask everyone to share what just happened. And we go around and everyone has radically different stories. And then one person, it was so brilliant, one person said, oh, I didn't notice someone left. Right? So even if we're looking at it in the most simple way, it's not what's happening, it's how we perceive what's happening that creates what we call reality. Nothing can be good from every point of view. Nothing can be bad from every point of view. So just understanding that life is what I call it then becomes an experiment, because I think life is an experiment rather than saying, I wonder if this is good for me. Okay, I'm going to experiment with starting to question my point of view rather than questioning what's happening. And just that alone can start to shift how I experience reality. So rather than gathering evidence to support my conclusion, we're playing with the idea that I have a conclusion and therefore I see the evidence to support that conclusion. If I decide the world is brutal and hostile, can I find evidence to support it? Yes. If I decide the world is kind and loving, can I find evidence to support that? Yes. Are either one of them untrue? No. So life truly is what we call it. So the only thing that needs to change for me is my point of view, not what's happening. So that's kind of the beginning of that conversation. And I'm sure we can go deeper than that, but I think that's a great way to start it.
Yeah, that's a good place to start. I was just kind of sitting over here, TJ, listening to you, and I was like, wow, it's really hard to be an active participant right now because I'm just like fully listening and like thinking about what you're saying, but I have no answer. I have no like response except for kind of like, holy shit, man. Like, I'm over here. That's what I'm thinking.
And your face down. Yeah. I gotta bring TJ and the audience into what just happened because, obviously I work with TJ a lot. And so I'll kind of like push and probe for these things. I'm like, TJ, what do you think about this? Just so that I can get, this perspective. Mm-hmm. And Dal, the look on your face, I've had so many times where it's just like, fuck.
That's so much to think about, you know? I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
I can't even like process it yet.
Yeah.
And what I love about what you said, Dallas, is like, imagine that we can live in the world that way all the time. Whoa, what's happening? Let me be curious. Let me be really present with what the person is saying. And rather than being in I'm going to respond, let me just be open and curious. Now, of course, you know, you're hosting a podcast, so I guess we're going to expect you to say something.
Yeah.
But isn't it amazing that we can actually be this open and curious?
Yeah, no, I love that. Like I can feel like I can say like, wow, like I really have to keep thinking about that. And I don't feel the need. I feel the need to say something, but when I acknowledge it, like, hey, I feel the need to say something, but I don't have anything to say because I'm still extremely curious about what TJ just said.
Yeah.
I guess then we can keep exploring that or having a conversation. So I just had to kind of call a spade. And also my face must have just been priceless.
Yeah, it was.
I don't know.
It was. Yeah. And I think, practically this kind of perspective, or like when you hear stuff like this, or when I hear stuff like this, I like to go to stories, you know, or anecdotes or ways that I've seen it in my life,
right,
on both sides. And you know, it's like where were we? Oh my gosh.
You were telling the story about the book that you were reading.
Yeah. But there was an example where something, when we were golfing, Dal.
Mm-hmm.
We were golfing, right? And this guy, so we're playing golf on Sunday.
Yeah.
And we're playing at a good pace and we're moving through the course, and the guys behind us, they're not like coming up on us. We're not playing slow. But this guy, for whatever reason, was like, hey, you guys need to pick it up.
Yeah.
Right? And of course, all of us immediately react like, who the fuck is this guy? Like, we're not even, like, there's nothing even going on here to warrant him saying that, right? And as we kind of played the course, we would talk about what we thought could be going on to motivate him to say something like that. And each of us had a different version, Dal. Remember that?
We did, yeah.
But even just exploring all the different versions of what could prompt him to say that diffused the immediate reactions that we had, which were pretty angry and, you know, and then so we're exploring all these different, maybe like his wife hates him. And like, this is like the only place that he has
solace,
any kind of like control, or, you know, and we're just like hypothesizing the day away. And, playing shit golf, mind you. And then as if the universe was just so tuned in, that same guy approached me and Dal after his round of golf, because Dallas and I had been chopping it up in the parking lot about work, talking about treatment, rehab, addiction, recovery, all that stuff. And he said, what program are you guys in? AA, NA, you know, and we come to find out the dude's sober.
Super sober.
We've been sober for like 30 years, you know, and we chopped it up with the guy who only a few hours earlier we were all pissed off at for telling us to hurry up. And I thought,
yeah, that's amazing.
That's amazing, right? And I was like, what a lesson. Like, look at this crazy cosmic chain of events, you know? And I thought that was really interesting.
It is super interesting.
You know, there's another story that I'll share. You know, as you were telling that story, I was flashing back about 14 years ago. And I know this because my nephew is 17 and he was 3 at the time. So my boyfriend and I at the time were out of town, and we both have nephews around the same age. And so we decided to take them on this adventure to the Monterey Bay Aquarium. And we went to dinner ahead of time. And, you know, having lived in San Francisco, it's easy for us to imagine. And one of the stories that we tell each other over and over again is that we live in this really open-minded bubble.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we can question that story for sure, but for the sake of
right.
let's just say that that's true, right? That's a story. So we're having dinner, and this woman kept staring at us. She just kept staring at us. And my story I went into was that she was being homophobic and that she was glaring at me. And I was noticing myself getting upset. And then I was getting angry and I was getting disturbed. And why is she doing this? And I was like imploding. Mm-hmm. She stood up and walked toward us. And I just started getting anxious. Like I could feel it. And she said, I am so sorry. I've been staring, but your family is so beautiful. And I just want to say, you know, your family is so beautiful. And I've really enjoyed watching how you interact with your kids. I had this whole story that wasn't even happening. But the deeper important part of this is I got to see what was unresolved within me, because I was projecting that onto her when she wasn't even doing that. So my projections are an indicator of where I still need some healing. So obviously I still needed some healing around some of my trauma of what it was like growing up, being a gay boy, and what that experience was like, and all the shame I took on from the people around me and about myself. So if I could look at that experience and recognize the possibilities that exist within it, I can say, ooh, there's some healing for me to do.
Yeah, and that's an amazing example. And I think one of the things that we touched on, Dal, and in our episode from a couple weeks back, a couple weeks ago, with reframing and projection and the role that plays. Mm-hmm. And before we dive further into projections, there was something at the top of the show tonight that I wanted to kind of look at again, or, you know, that's coming up for me right now. And that is, we are not our thoughts, opinions, stories, right? And that concept, TJ, like you and I had been talking about that for years, I think, before it really clicked with me, before I really understood that the thoughts I have in my head are not me, and they're not necessarily my thoughts. And so maybe on our way to Projectionville, we can kind of make a pit stop at, you know, Egoville and talk about how thoughts aren't us.
How they're different.
Yeah, because that concept is so, or at least for me, in my experience, it was very hard for me to get it. And then once I got it, it's like, oh my God, there's no going back. All right, everybody, that's going to do it for part one of our conversation with TJ Woodward. Listen, before you guys all start tweeting me, I know there is no good spot to end this episode. We split it into two parts because it is very long. There's a lot to digest. Also, Dal's on vacation. That also had something to do with it. So I know it felt kind of abrupt, but I promise next week when you guys hear part two, it's all going to come together. That being said, listen, there are fires all over the place. There are fires in my homeland of Colorado. There are fires in my new land of California. So listen, just stay safe out there. Dal's in Mexico right now, having the time of his life, celebrating his 6 years sober. So I know he's being safe down there. Everybody be safe, okay? And of course, if we can support you in any way, hit us up. You know where to find us. That being said, we will see you guys next week.